everyone, thanks for checking into the RC Driver channel. I have something very cool that you have to see today. This is the Axial Capra, and it's been out for a little while. I just finished building up my kit, and it was a great building experience, and there is a lot to talk about on this buggy. Axial did an amazing job with creating this thing. This is a 1.9 unlimited trail buggy. It's a full build up kit, and you have to buy all your own electronics for it, and when it's done, you have this killer rock and trail buggy, basically, that you can go and have a ton of fun with out on all sorts of off-road terrain. And that's exactly what I'm going to do to it in a little bit, but first we're going to go over all the features that you need to know about this buggy, and we'll start off on the outside of it, of course, with this cage. This cage is really awesome. Nice thick composite plastic roll cage, bolts together multiple pieces, a lot of hex hardware to get this thing together. So if you don't have an electric driver with some hex bits to put this thing together, you're going to be doing a lot of wrench time with handheld tools. But overall, really cool look to it. Really gives it that trail buggy look. It's got Lexan panels, of course, to finish it off. And I just went and airbrushed it with some Proline paints, and came out great. Just a really nice lines to these body panels. It basically allows you to go and take those panels off and maybe put some custom panels on if you want to. The hood actually pops up, and this is where you have your battery access. So we have two clips right underneath the front here, and the body posts are actually mounted to the hood itself. So you just hinge it up here, and then you could access your battery tray. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But this has a really cool look. The other outside feature I do want to point out is it does come with this light bar, which is very cool that they went and gave you that pretty neat looking setup. They actually have an optional lens for it if you want to go and deck it out a little bit more, but it's just nice that they went and included that. Up front here, we also have a small grille. It's got the Axial logo in the front. It's got some pretty good detail to it, and it actually came with the lenses already press fit in there. So you could go and put LED lights in there, which is what I did. I went and put some 5mm lights in because I am running an AE5L speed controller in here, which has the pigtails, so I could use the Axial wire kit, and that's what I did. I'll go put part numbers to that stuff in the description below, but let me turn this around to the back. There's also a fuel cell out back, gives it that scale look to it, but you could also go and mount some electronics in there, so that's pretty cool. Just a really nice look to it. We got these cool looking molded side panels that actually integrate into that battery mount that I told you about. And again, I think that's pretty awesome. Oh, we got to talk about the interior as well. So the interior is a molded Lexan, and we've got separate driver heads like we do on most of the Axial vehicles out there. You can go paint it up whatever color you like, but they do go and give you some decals, so it goes and adds some more detail to that interior. Like the way that looks as well, and Axial did a great job with the look of this unlimited trail buggy. All right, now I'm going to go take some body panels off, and we're going to talk about all the features on the inside of the buggy. All right, I got the body panels off, and I just want to show off this cage work a little bit more. They did a great job on the design of it. It's a really rigid structure for the frame of this vehicle, so kudos to Axial on that one. One of the other things that I want to point out before going on further is the plastics on this. So one of the benefits of Axial being under Horizon now is they get to work with some of their other brands, more specifically Team Lizzie Racing. The plastics on this are the same plastics used on the TLR 8X platform. So it's a really good proven plastic that works on racing vehicles, and so they've used that plastic here as well. So you know that these plastics are going to be a lot stronger, they're going to take a lot more abuse, and they've got to give you a performance feel, as far as rigidity goes. So that's really cool that they made that big change. I mean, you could see it just in the plastics themselves, the sheen of them, even the ball ends, it all looks really solid. All right, now with that said, let's start talking about the axles on this. So these are Curry F9 portal axles, and it's a really nice design. So of course the benefit of a portal axle is you have much more ground clearance, and with the design of this axle you just have a lot of center clearance, and then you have the gear reduction in the portal hubs, both front and rear on this. So there's less torque twist, and it's a better performing vehicle on multiple levels. Now inside it does have spiral cut gears, we have full ball bearings inside, and then in the front we have universal axles, which is a really nice setup. With that universal setup, it allows you to get up to 45 degrees of steering, and there's a little bit of steering issue that I need to talk to you guys about, but that will come with the steering talk. But back to the axles here, everything is supported by ball bearings on the outside as well, and everything is steel gears, even in the portal setups. So no plastic gears anywhere in this transmission or driveline setup. So definitely like the way that is. Now in the rear, we've got pretty much the same thing. We've got the spiral cut gears. It's a 6-bolt pattern to the spool, so it's nice and solid. You know, you don't have to worry about screws stripping out or anything like that. It does appear that you're going to be able to fit the overdrive or underdrive gears in here. I believe I saw people already doing that. And the axles are steel as well in the rear. Now, one thing I just wanted to go and point out is there's this extra space in the outside of the axle that looks like it's for another bearing. And I kind of talked to the Axial guys about that and said, you know, why is there no bearing there? And they said it's not needed. The way that axle is supported by all the other bearings, there's no need for that outer bearing. And not only that, they actually made the outside of the steel axle a little bit thicker in that area, and that's just for improved durability. So you don't need to go and worry yourself about finding a bearing there. It's really not needed. You know, the only concern I kind of saw within the axles, within the portals, was the top gear inside the portal. It did have a square cutout in it, and kind of when you have a square, you got those edges, and you kind of worry about breakage there. But I've only seen very few people that have reported breakage on that online, and they actually admitted that they really had to try in order to break it. So it looks like they have a solid drivetrain there. While we're talking about the driveline, let me talk about the center drive shafts. So these are the wild boar drive shafts that we've seen on so many of Axial's vehicles. They've got nice steel universals in here. We got the sliders in the center. And now let's talk about the center transmission. Now this is a dig transmission, and what that means is you could go and you could run this thing in 4-wheel drive, and then with a flip of a switch, you could run it in front-wheel drive with the rear locked. And that allows you to have much tighter turning radiuses, which is you know, really important when you're out there going up rock faces and stuff like that, and you want to turn tightly around something. This will allow you to do that. It's a great additional feature that will definitely just improve your driving experience. Now, you don't have to go and build it with a dig. There's a simple washer that you can put in there to lock it out, and it'll just be 4-wheel drive all the time. But you do have that option, and you will need an optional shift servo. Kind of going into electronics here, but it's really part of the transmission. Dig on this transmission was designed around the SCX10 Spectrum servo, which has caused a little bit of an issue with some. Some people like to put their own equipment in there, but because this was designed around that particular servo, it has a base to it that only comes in the servo kit, and you could find it elsewhere with some other part trees that Losi has to offer. But the rest of the servo arm parts that come with the kit for the dig really made up to that base, so you kind of need that. Now, like I said, there's a couple workarounds out there. Some guys are printing 3D mounts for their servo. They're also, you know, coming up with a upper arm system for it, so there's workarounds. But that 107 servo has proven to be a reliable, you know, inexpensive servo, so you could go and drop that in with ease. And the only thing you're actually going to need beyond that is a servo extension wire, because the servo lead on that is rather short. All right, now let me actually get to the transmission in here. It is an all-metal gear transmission with full ball bearings in there, 32 pitch throughout, and even the dig plates inside, those are metal as well, so it's not going to be like plastic and it's going to wear out. Even the shift fork is also metal inside, so it's a really robust drive system in this thing. And it actually has a slipper clutch as well. The only thing it doesn't have in there is a metal or aluminum motor plate, but I don't foresee this motor getting really hot in there. And the only downside to that plastic plate is if you start to really crank down on your motor screws, it could warp the plate a little bit. The only other thing I want to talk to you about with the transmission is it does have a pretty tall ratio, and word is out about that. You know, and when you want to go and rock crawl, you want you know, like a smaller pinion gear on there. And there is a little bit of a workaround. You can find some motor screws with a smaller head that will allow you to shift the motor over a little bit more and put a bit smaller of a pinion gear on there. But that's one thing that people are finding ways to work around right now, is that tall gear ratio. So I built this up just for fun. I'm not worried about, you know, just crazy creeping slow crawling for this. I'm more going to go out on the trail element side of this, where, you know, I'm going to climb some rocks, but, you know, I'm just going to have some fun with whatever obstacles are on the trails. And I have some pretty fun places picked out to go drive this in a little bit. But back onto the features of it, I think that pretty much rounds out the drivetrain here. Let's move on to the suspension. Let's talk about the links first. Now, the links on this are huge 6mm links, and they are reverse threaded, so it's easy to tune the length of these, you know, to get them to all be equal. They do have a hole in the center, and people were a little concerned concerned about the hole in the center of it, but these are 6mm steel links. To bust a link like that, I don't really see that happening, but it's nice that they are adjustable. And again, these rod ends are that high strength plastic, but more importantly, they now have steel pivot balls in the suspension links. How awesome is that? Really nice to see that they got away from those plastic ball studs in there. Definitely like that they went that route. Now the other thing is this is a 4-link front and rear setup, so it's not like a trail truck where you've got a panhard bar up front nowadays, and then the 4-link in the rear. We got 4-link front and rear, and then the shocks on here. So these are large bore shocks. They've got an aluminum body on there, a composite bleeder cap on the top, and even the ball studs on the shocks are metal as well. You know, your standard shock shaft, and they even have a clamping perch on the bottom. They actually give you 2 sets of springs in the kit, and I have the lighter set on here. This is kind of another topic of discussion in a lot of groups out there, is the springs are rather long, I guess. So the rig sits up kind of high, you know, even when you have a battery in here. I don't have a battery in here, but it sits up kind of high. So there's people seeking out optional springs to just let the rig have a little bit more droop in it. Some people are also putting pen springs on the inside of the shock to push against the piston and to help lower the vehicle a little bit. So that's, you know, a little bit of a gripe there as well. Is I wish it had some more droop. A lot of people wish that, just, you know, get some better handling out of it. But overall, the shocks feel nice. No leaking yet. Of course, I haven't been on the trails yet. But again, they build pretty well. And of course, they look great on the rig. There is 3 spots up top where you can go and adjust the position to alter the angle of the shock a little bit. But that really makes up the suspension on this. As you can see, all the links mount to the lowest point possible on the axles here, and the shock is right next to it. So it's not like some of the other axial kits like the SCX10s where you go and mod it by dropping the shock down to the same pivot point as the link. It's already done there, so it's set up, ready to go. All right, so we talked about the drive line, we talked about the suspension, we've talked about the cage. Let's talk about the steering setup here. So again, it's capable of 45-degree steering. We've got the nice 6mm links in the front, and we've got the servo mounted to the front of the axle. And I went with a Spectrum 6390BL servo in here. Nice metal case, high torque servo. Now the only thing is, it's got a really nice setup. We've got some bent tie rod ends out here, which, you know, gives some more clearance to that front steering rod. But when you go and turn the steering, you'll notice that the steering link hits the axle. So it would have been nice if they kind of bowed this front steering link a little bit, so you get a little bit more steering out of it. But, you know, for right out of the box, it's got a lot of steering. So for those of you, again, just having fun with it, you're not going to notice that. But those of you that want to get some really tight lines in when you're maybe out on a competition, you might want to go and do that mod. All right, now that we've talked about the steering, let me talk about my electronics that are in here. So this is kind of a setup for having some fun with this vehicle. I have an Axial 27-turn motor in there. It's their brushed motor, silver can motor, and that should work just fine with the stock gearing that comes with this vehicle. For the speed controller, I went with the Dynamite AE5L. It's just a good baseline speed controller. It has drag brake in there. I actually moved over to a little chip, so it has 100% drag brake. It comes fitted with the IC plug on it. It actually has bullet connectors, so you go plug it in right to the motor right out of the box. So if you're looking for a plug-in and play package, you know, check out that system. Again, links for those products will be in the description below. I've already talked to you guys about the Dig Servo in there, and then I went with a Spectrum radio system. So I got my rugged radio here, and I've got a Spectrum receiver in there. Now there are a lot of connectors on the inside of this, and I have everything mounted to the back of the battery plate up here, and I've got all the wires just bundled up inside of there. You know, we've got the wire for the steering servo, we've got the wire for the throttle, we've got the wire for the Dig Servo, and then because of the lights, I had to go and solder some more wires to the connector in order to power that, because I also have a Castle Creations battery eliminator circuit in there wired up. So there's a lot of wires on the inside, but what's pretty nice is the details on this. Axial went and gave you some little wire guides that you go and put just in a number of different places in there, so you can go and bundle up your wires nice and neat. Now finally, I want to talk to you about the battery compartment. So the battery compartment is adjustable. You could go and move that electronics plate or the back plate forward and backward to fit a battery in there. I'm just going to run it on a 2S pack. I've got this Dynamite reaction pack over here, so I'm going to run on that. It's already fitted with an EC3 connector, which will mate up with that IC3 connector. And there's certainly spacing in there to mount some smaller packs, so some smaller 3S packs, some small 2S packs. So you just have to, hit up the dimensions and find what pack is going to work best for you. All right, one thing that I kind of want to mention too is on the bottom side here, we've got this nice small skid plate basically in the center here, and then the boat sides, which will help you just slide over rocks, and everything is just nice and smooth on the bottom. Nothing to really hang up on here. Really well designed. I like that. All right, let's see what else. Let's talk about the wheels and tires that I have on it. Now, it doesn't come with tires. You're going to have to buy tires, so I have Proline Hyrax tires on this, and just a really great tread, offers a lot of grip, but Axial does go and give you the rims for this. So these are Raceline Monster beadlock wheels. It's a 3-piece wheel, and it doesn't have their venting system on there. It is vented, but you can't adjust the venting on there, so that's a little bit of a change up from some of the other vehicles we've seen from the Axial Camp, but it is a nice looking wheel, and it does the job of clamping down on the tire as well. One final thing I have to mention, the instruction manual that came with this, not the best from the Axial Camp, and people are already aware of that. Just hit up their website. They have a revised manual on there, and that will help you out through the build. All right, guys, this is it. It is time for me to go outside. I've been really itching to go drive this thing. It is very cool. It's been on my bench for a while in the building process. Now it's time to go and see how it drives. Okay, it's performance report time, but before I get into that, I just wanted to take a second here to say nice job, Axial. You know, we've seen a number of SCX10s come out, and they were cool in their own right, but this new ground-up design Capra is pretty awesome. From the design elements to the quality of the parts to the overall performance of it, it is just a great rig to go out and get. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the details, and let's start obviously with handling. We got to talk about handling. Now, out there on the rocks, this thing was a blast to drive, and it is a super capable rig. Now, I got to go right into the articulation of it, and when I got over to that rocky area where I was testing it, it was just cool to see this thing just kind of float over the rocks, and the front axle and rear axle twisting in different directions, and watching that center chassis just stick in the center without rolling too much. It was really cool to see. You know, it is super capable. As I was going up a lot of the rocks, it was climbing stuff that I've never been able to climb with other rigs there before. You know, I've driven a lot of SCX10s there actually, and this is a whole nother level. So if you're, you know, from the SCX10 realm, this is totally a different league here. And you know, it was just able to get up a lot of the stuff that I wanted to crawl over. And what made it really easy was the clearance of the axles here. And so it's a nice welcome addition that we finally have portals available for Axial kits. Now, it does have a pretty wide stance to it, but I didn't really find that to be too big of a problem. Where I was crawling, I could see maybe, you know, some people with going over some sharp, jagged rocks and stuff like that, or small boulders. You might get some issues there as far as the stance goes. But actually, a lot of the time, I was just able to crawl up a lot of inclines, go through some gaps and stuff like that without issue. And I think the suspension does work pretty well. It could use a little bit of lowering, and that's pretty much out there already. Everybody knows about that. You know, you could go and find some different springs for it. Some people are doing a pen spring mod on the inside of the shock. So yes, that is definitely something, you know, if you really get into it, you probably want to research some more. But right out of the box, it's super capable. Don't let that deter you at all. It is just an absolute fun rig, and you know, will definitely climb a lot of stuff out there. It's just when you go to challenge yourself, you'll want that lower height. The drivetrain on this just works spectacular. This dig function in here is pretty awesome. I have not been a big dig guy in the past. Kind of just steered clear from them. I like to just drive my rigs, but I really got into using the dig on this. It was pretty cool to just suck the front end down when climbing some rocks, letting the rear end drag as on some of the descents. And actually, you know, the speed controller worked out pretty well with the gear reduction in here. And so the drive line, the power, it all actually worked out pretty well for me. I really liked how the power system in here worked with the drivetrain. It just made it a fun rig to drive. You know, that's my main thing. Having fun with it. I'm not much of a competition guy. So of course, if you're that type of person, you're going to have a different want and need out of the vehicle. But the driveline on this works really well as far as just crawling up everything, giving you the power you need. The 2S pack, you know, it was okay. I kind of wish I had a 3S pack. There was a couple of gaps that I just wanted to jump over and clear, and you know, it just didn't have the power for that. And the bottom end, it was, you know, a little bit hesitant. I didn't have that low end, you know, slow low end speed that I would have liked out of it. But again, for the fun factor, the power system in here that I chose was great, and I'll actually have links to all that stuff in the description below if you're just looking into building up a fun vehicle like this. Onto the steering also works really well on this. It's got some pretty good throw to it, and then coupled with that dig function, you're able to just whip the front end around. So that was a lot of fun. But just, you know, navigating through some of the rocks and stuff like that, using the servo to muscle the front end into, you know, different positions, so I could continue my crawl. That was a lot of fun and easy as well. I do think it could use a little bit of tweaking though. I wasn't able to get you know, full lock steering on it, so I needed to work on that a little bit. So maybe even going and doing the mod that some guys are doing where they're bending the front link so it clears the front pumpkin on the axle to get even more steering. That might be something I want to go and do. But right out of the box, again, this is something I want to emphasize. It is pure fun and very capable right out of the box, as is. So those of you going on some weekend fun adventures with some buddies or even by yourself, I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the way it steers. You'll definitely get through the obstacles, you know, fairly easily. You know, the other nice function about the portal axles on here is the gear reduction pretty much minimizes the torque twist. And so, you know, when you're crawling on stuff, it's very predictable the way this buggy is going to handle, where it's going to react. What, you know, if you're clearing stuff, you'll be able to, you know, basically see what's coming ahead of you and plan your lines even better. So I really like the handling of this. Again, the whole package is just really, really well done. Now it's just time to talk about durability. As far as, you know, what I experienced with it, I didn't experience anything breaking on there. And actually within the first 30 seconds of me driving this thing, I was going for that hero shot, and this thing actually dove off of a pretty tall ledge and landed right on the rear corner of the cage. And you know, it's pretty beat up in the rear corner, but there is no nothing broken, and you know, it's just some battle scars, which is pretty cool. You know, it's just some scratches on the bottom. The boat side bottom works great for sliding over the rocks. This chassis, again, still nice and stiff. As far as other things that I would want to do to it, I would probably want to put some weight in the front of it. I might go and tweak the shocks as well. I think that's something that I would enjoy, just having that lower center of gravity, but definitely adding a little bit more weight. I think it would just bump up the ability of this rig, make it a lot easier to drive, you know, on the inclines and stuff, because there was some stuff that I was crawling with this where I was like, wow, this is some pretty steep inclines, and it would just kind of rock back a little bit and kind of just actually sit on the rear wheels. So it wanted to do more, and if I had some weight in there, I could have gone on some pretty intense climbs. But again, overall here, the fun factor is totally there. It's just really fun to build this thing up. You get to outfit it with the electronics that you want to. You even get it to paint it the way you want to. It's just a great machine for those of you that maybe in the SCX10 world, you're looking to go to the next level, or maybe you're just an RC guy that just has to have the best of the best to go out and really climb some challenging stuff. And the Axial Capra, it's definitely a rig for the off-road adventurist.